So much to be said about the day ahead, but first, let's look back and give you a recap of what you might have missed yesterday. And for that, we're bringing our team from Braamfontein. Michelle Craig, no stranger to the AM report, alongside our Sbu Ngalwa. And guys, many concessions yesterday, some deflections as well, but certainly the kind of information that will, I guess, have a lot of people asking questions about what to expect today.
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning to you, Ayanda, and to our viewers as well at home. Live to you here from Braamfontein, just outside the venue where the President will today, from 9 o'clock again, continue with day 2 of his testimony at the state capture inquiry. And perhaps, Sbu Ngalwa, let's begin with what the President had to say in that soundbite we just heard on air moments ago, when he spoke out against the appointment of Des van Rooyen as Finance Minister. We remember him as the weekend special. He was in that position for all of a weekend. He says those were the key moments when, as Deputy President, he decided to speak out. In fact, in that moment, threatening to resign himself.
In fact, I must hasten to say that at that moment he did not speak out publicly. It was only when Pravin Gordhan and Mcebisi Jonas were removed from their positions. But I think now this was the President telling us and actually trying to assure South Africans, or even gain their trust, to say that he actually spoke out. He was willing to leave at the time when Des van Rooyen was appointed. Now, there are two ways to look at it, Michelle. One, it's either you accept his explanation, where he goes on to say that he actually said quietly, he gave a number of options of what he could have done, and says that at the end of the day, he chose to stay in President Zuma's government, or cabinet rather, so as to fight from within, as to challenge some of the instances of state capture. Now, you would have, I think hindsight is a very good teacher. I mean, I look at this with a cynical view, in that you would have had to have been a soothsayer or a sangom to have known how things were going to pan out. At the time that he was within President Zuma's cabinet, there is no way that the Deputy President, or the President currently and Deputy President at that time, would have known if whatever attempts he says he made would have been successful. At the same time, there was no way he would have known that he would have been made, ANC would have become ANC President in 2017. Yesterday, I made mention of the issue of principle. In fact, South Africans have short memories. If there is one person in the ANC who took a principled stance, it was actually Kgalema Motlanthe in 2012. Kgalema Motlanthe, with very few nominations, I think there was one solid province that nominated him in 2012. Already at that time, there were murmurs and clamor within the ANC around about the Gupta's influence over the president. And Gauteng, being the urban province that it is, and also kind of looking at the threats to its electoral power. In fact, we saw what happened in 2016. They were correct in their projection that they would lose power in those metros. Kgalema Motlanthe stood against Jacob Zuma, knowing fully well that he would lose, because Jacob Zuma had been nominated by the majority of ANC provinces. But he stood. In fact, Cyril Ramaphosa benefited from that conference, because that is where he was made Deputy President of the ANC. So if we're talking about principle and taking a principled stance, I think that title, or that accolade, if I may, would probably bestow it to someone like a Kgalema Motlanthe. I think in the case of the President actually was playing politics. It was a political game that he played, and a political game that rewarded him greatly in 2017.
Yeah. And yesterday you talked as well about party over principle. So what you're saying, Sbu Ngalwa, is that the President is asking us to believe that, his critics will say, where were you, Mr. President, at the time when you were Deputy President? What did you know? How much did you know? What did you do about it? He's asking us now to believe him when he says, a lot of what came out about the Gupta family, about key people who were appointed to SOEs, I really didn't know, and I read it in the media.
So there are two ways to look at that, Michelle. One being that the role of a Deputy President. It seems like a nice lofty role, in that a Deputy President deputizes a president, and there's some expectation that that person would take over, but it's not cast in stone, even in the ANC. And also even in government, the Deputy President's roles or functions are actually pretty much at the mercy of the president. So pretty much it's more a ceremonial role. And so because of how
You're saying
it is
no real
structured,
power.
really, in terms of how it is structured, it is almost inevitable that you will always have a tension between a deputy president and the president. We saw it in the previous administration between Zuma and Thabo Mbeki, and I'm sure between Thabo Mbeki and Mandela, but I'm sure Mandela at that time, because already he knew he would serve one term, so it was better manageable. But we saw these tensions between Zuma and Mbeki, and we saw them between Ramaphosa and Zuma, and I'm sure in no time we'll probably see some of those tensions come onto the surface between him and his current deputy, David Mabuza. So effectively, in that role, he has to do what the president tells him to. But the expectation, though, is that because it is a senior role and also is the leader of government business, being the liaison between the executive and parliament, there is expectation that he's the most senior leader in the party to go to the president and say, President, but what is happening?
Right.
But the sense we are getting is that he did not ask many questions. He actually allowed the president to do as he pleases. Hence, he says he was not aware of some of the meetings. He was not consulted on some of the appointments, Michelle.
In fact, John Steenhuisen, coming on this channel, in fact, here in our studios yesterday, going as far as to say not only did he allow, but he actively supported the president at the time in Parliament. I want to just play our viewers this one particular soundbite, because a lot of what the president talked about yesterday as well was around the ANC's deployment committee, taking some criticism there in terms of JSC appointments in particular. Just take a listen to what the president had to say in his testimony.
The real safety for the process is that the deployment committee is not the appointing entity. You may well say influence. Yes, political party will always seek to influence. Precisely what you were also saying, that maybe if you want to influence, do it transparently. And I would buy into that. Do it openly and say, we support this one and that one. And in the end, even the public does get involved sometimes when there's nominations for judges or top positions. They will say this one is preferable, and when that person has not been appointed, there's an outcry that they left out this one and so on. So influence, yes, but appointment, no, because in the end, the ANC deployment committee is not the appointing structure.
So, Sbu Ngalwa, influence, yes. Appointment, no. This is what the president wants us to believe. And I want us to discuss this under the guise of what CASEC, that application that CASEC launched in June of this year. It was quite critical of the JSC interviews that had taken place at the time. In fact, going so far as to say the interviews are not a platform for party politics. CASEC saying that was what it had become.
Now, effectively, in the president saying that influence, yes, but appointment, no, it's actually, the reality is that it's appointing without the appointing powers, effectively. Right. In that we know, I mean, if ministers want to appoint DGs, they go to or they want senior members of their staff appointed, they go to the deployment committee to motivate. And the deployment committee also either gives a thumbs up or a thumbs down. So effectively, it's an appointing authority without the powers. So now I think where it becomes problematic, particularly with the issues that was raised yesterday about judges, is that it casts aspersions on our judiciary. And remember that there's a lot that is happening not just here but outside in society, in that the judiciary has been under attack, has been accused of playing politics, of being involved in political fights, not least by the former president of the country, who accused the Constitutional Court of playing politics. Now, with the revelation yesterday that the ANC's deployment committee had discussed the name of judges, it kind of plays into that arena. So what that then means is that, I mean, you said you had John Steenhuisen yesterday being a bit coy in terms of not saying explicitly whether the JSE must change the way in which they are constituted. Already now we know that there's that application by CASAC, and I think when time allows, Michelle, we can go into that and talk about what exactly the issues that CASAC are raising and how some of the evidence that was given here yesterday may have an impact on that very application.
Yeah, in fact, CASAC saying some of the questioning in those JSC interviews was irrelevant. It was aimed at ambushing the candidates, resulting in them suffering severe prejudice. So that's certainly one of the bombshell revelations, one of many, in fact, at the state capture inquiry. The President's first day of testimony just yesterday. The other must certainly be that he was the one who recommended Brian Molefe for the position of Eskom CEO. Ayanda Nyati, as you can see, we've still got a lot to unpack for you here as we continue to look back at the first day and try and build up to what we can expect from the President today, day 2 at the state capture inquiry.